It was a clear September morning until the sky exploded. On September 11, 2001, 4 hijacked planes tore through the heart of America. The World Trade Center collapsed. The Pentagon burned. Flight 93 disintegrated in a Pennsylvania field. Nearly 3,000 lives lost. But something else died that day, to an old version of American identity. Because 9/11s didn't just change the skyline. It changed how we think, how we live. It's how we define safety, loyalty, and the enemy. This is the story of how a single morning reshaped a nation forever.
9/11s
Is often remembered as a moment frozen in time. The smoke, the sirens, the silence after the collapse. But its real legacy is not just tragedy, it's transformation. In the wake of the attacks, the United States became a different country. One that prioritized security over privacy, redefined patriotism as surveillance, and saw neighbors turn into suspects. We entered a new age of endless war, fear-based policy, and a culture that demanded loyalty or silence. This documentary isn't just about what happened on 9/11s, it's about what happened after and how those choices shaped who we are today. It's the age of fear and patriotism. In the immediate aftermath of 9/11s, America experienced a wave of unity and a surge of fear. Across the country, people wept together, prayed together, and rallied under the flag. Lines to donate blood stretched around blocks. Firefighters became national heroes. Strangers hugged in airports. Churches, mosques, and synagogues filled with people seeking comfort. Then came the rhetoric. President George W. Bush, standing on the rubble at Ground Zero, promised justice. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. The people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon. That unity hardened into resolve and fear. Bush delivered a chilling ultimatum. Either you are with us, or you are with the terrorists. It wasn't just a slogan. It was a line in the sand, and millions stood behind it. American flags appeared in windows, on bumpers, in-store displays. Patriotism became a litmus test. To criticize the government, even to question the war that was about to begin, was seen by many as un-American. Media, music, and movies reflected this mood. Songs like Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue topped charts. Films and news coverage painted a world of heroes and enemies, good versus evil. But beneath the surface, a transformation was already underway. A transformation that would give the government new powers and citizens fewer rights. The Patriot Act and the rise of the surveillance state in the weeks following 9/11s, the U.S. government moved with unprecedented speed. Just 45 days after the attacks, Congress passed the USA Patriot Act, a sweeping piece of legislation that changed the relationship between the government and its citizens. Its name was an acronym, providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. On the surface, it was about protecting Americans. Behind the curtain, it redefined privacy, civil liberties, and state power. The act allowed federal agencies to conduct wiretaps and surveillance without traditional warrants, to monitor online activity, emails and phone records. 3. Access bank, medical, and library records without informing the person targeted. IV. Detain immigrants indefinitely without charge. Under suspicion of terrorism, most Americans didn't read the 300-plus page bill, but they accepted it. Because after 9/11s, fear overruled hesitation. The idea was simple. If you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to worry about. But that belief would be challenged over time. In 2013, Edward Snowden, a former NSA contractor, leaked classified documents showing the extent of the government's domestic surveillance programs. The PRISM program had collected massive amounts of data on U.S. citizens' emails, phone logs, social media usage without their knowledge or consent. It wasn't just about catching terrorists anymore. It was about control, data, and silence. The post-9/11's identity of America had become one of hypervigilance. Citizens began policing themselves, what they said, where they went, who they associated with. And with every camera installed and every right quietly eroded, the line between freedom and security began to blur. Islamophobia and the racialization of Muslims, while the government built its surveillance infrastructure. Another transformation unfolded in the streets, a rise in Islamophobia that reshaped the daily lives of millions of Americans. After 9/11s, Anyone who looked Muslim, regardless of actual faith, became a potential suspect. Mosques were vandalized. Women in hijabs were spit on, harassed, even assaulted. Men with beards or turbans, often Sikhs, not Muslims, were mistaken as terrorists and attacked. Balbir Singh Sodhi, a Sikh gas station owner in Arizona, was murdered for days after 9/11s. His killer told police, "I'm a patriot." Across the country, flying while Muslim became a common phrase. Muslim passengers were removed from planes for praying, speaking Arabic, or simply making others uncomfortable. Even U.S. citizens with Middle Eastern or South Asian names were profiled at airports, monitored by FBI agents, or placed on no-fly lists without explanation. Muslim children were bullied in schools. Muslim charities were raided and shut down under suspicion without due process. The Patriot Act made it legal to detain immigrants, mostly from Muslim-majority countries, without formal charges or access to legal counsel. And in 2011, a shocking investigation revealed that the New York Police Department, with help from the CIA, had conducted widespread surveillance of Muslim communities, spying on mosques, student groups, and restaurants. No evidence of terrorism was ever found. But the damage was done. An entire group of Americans was redefined in the public eye by their values, their citizenship, or their beliefs, but by their religion, race, and appearance. The result? A new kind of American identity had emerged, us and them. And the war wasn't just being fought abroad, it was being fought in airports, classrooms, city streets, and behind closed doors. Foreign policy. The war on terror in the days after 9/11s, President George W. Bush declared a new kind of war. Operation Enduring Freedom began in October 2001. The U.S. invaded Afghanistan to dismantle the Taliban and capture Osama bin Laden, the architect of 9/11s, but the mission evolved quickly. It wasn't just about justice, it was about remaking the world. In 2003, the U.S. turned its attention to Iraq, claiming Saddam Hussein possessed weapons of mass destruction. With it came mass civilian casualties, drone strikes, contractor armies, and black site secret prisons where suspects were tortured in the name of intelligence. Detainees were held for years without trial. Some were later proven innocent. The image of America as a beacon of liberty was cracking, especially abroad. Protests erupted worldwide. U.S. foreign policy was increasingly seen as imperialist, not liberating. Yet back home, many Americans still viewed the wars as necessary a way to prevent another 9/11s. But as the years dragged on, and young soldiers returned with PTSD, missing limbs, and hard questions, the reality set in. We were no longer just defending ourselves. We were stuck in forever wars. By the time U.S. troops pulled out of Afghanistan in 2021, 20 years later, more than 7,000 American soldiers and over 300,000 civilians had died in U.S.-led conflicts tied to 9/11s. The war on terror redrew America's foreign policy from diplomacy to preemptive strike. Homeland security and everyday life, its presence quickly became part of daily life. Shoes off, belts off, empty your liquids, random screenings, body scans, no jokes allowed. The Transportation Security Administration didn't just change how we travel, it normalized suspicion. Entire generations have now grown up never knowing a world before TSA lines or color-coded terror threat levels. Posters reading, "If you see something, say something," popped up in subways, malls, and bus stations. A culture of vigilance was born, one that often blurred the line between caution and paranoia. Public buildings installed metal detectors. Teachers ran lockdown drills. Mosques installed security cameras not to keep outsiders out, but to document their own safety. Even entertainment reflected the shift. News coverage looped stories of potential threats, keeping the population on edge. And through it all, Americans adapted. They accepted restrictions on privacy and movement in exchange for a sense, sometimes false, of safety. Over time, fear became routine, and what started as an emergency response quietly evolved into permanent infrastructure. Cautious, watchful, nervous, psychological legacy, grief, drama, and division. September 11, 2001 wasn't just a historical event, it was a collective trauma. For those who watched the towers fall in real time, the images are burned into memory. Ash-covered survivors, jumpers, firefighters disappearing into smoke. Even for those who didn't live through it directly, the psychological aftermath was passed down. An entire generation, the 9/11's generation, grew up with war on the news, fear in their classrooms, and suspicion in the air. Many children lost parents. Others watched their communities scapegoated. Thousands of soldiers came home with invisible wounds, PTSD, depression, addiction. 9/11's became a national identity marker before 9/11's, and after 9/11's, the country never quite returned to what it was. While the initial aftermath brought unity, the long-term effects bred division. What began as never forget evolved into I never forgive 2. Always defend 3. Trust no one. Conspiracy theories flourished. Some believed the government let it happen or made it happen. As time passed, the emotional consensus fractured. The memory of 9/11's became political, contested, and sometimes weaponized. America was no longer just a country in mourning. It had become a nation at war with itself. Who are we now? 20-plus years after the towers fell, the question still lingers. What kind of nation did 9/11's create? Surveillance is smarter. Intelligence is sharper. We're also more fragmented, more anxious, and more deeply aware that terror doesn't just come from outside. It can grow from within. Islamophobia still exists, but it's being challenged by new generations. Veterans now speak out not just with pride, but with pain and often regret. The Patriot Act, still mostly intact, though parts have been quietly rolled back under pressure. The war on terror has faded from headlines, but its fingerprints are everywhere. In airport scanners, in racial profiling, the normalization of drone warfare, in the walls we build physical and psychological. Where patriotism once meant freedom, it now often means compliance. Where unity once meant solidarity, it sometimes now means silencing dissent. But there's hope too. Young Americans are pushing for accountability, demanding truth, transparency, and equity. They see the complexity, the contradictions, and the cost of fear. Because to move forward, America must ask. It shattered certainty, innocence, the illusion of invulnerability. But from the wreckage, something else took root, a new identity, forged by fear, shaped by policy, and haunted by memory. We built walls, we launched wars, sacrificed privacy for security, freedom for control. It challenges the narratives we're fed and the ones we feed ourselves. 2 decades later, the legacy of 9/11's lives not just in the memorials, but in our laws, our culture, our foreign policy, and our hearts. It's time we remember the cost, not just in lives lost, but in who we've become. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe for more untold histories that shape our present. Comment below, what do you think America gained or lost after 9/11's?